Leger, thanks so much for coming on to Talk Beliefs all the way from North Carolina, USA. You are an author and a certified life coach helping not only ex-Jehovah's Witnesses like yourself, but anyone who has been disowned or estranged due to sexual orientation, difference in religious belief, political affiliation, and work to encourage others to stand up for themselves and to be happy with who they are. Well, you're a life coach, as we mentioned, but currently you're not taking on any new clients, but rather are concentrating on your second book entitled Burning Down the House. So how are you, Bethany, and how's the writing been going?
I'm doing well. First of all, thank you so much for having me on. I love your channel. The writing is going well. I am trying to get published with a traditional house, and it's kind of a convoluted, complicated process, the whole publishing world. So anyways, I'm going to finish writing the book, and when I'm done, I'm going to shop it around for like 6 months and see if anyone picks it up, if a traditional house picks it up. And if they don't, I'll just self-publish.
Today, we're going to be talking about why you left the Jehovah's Witnesses and how it led to 2 YouTube channels and 2 books. We'll also talk about PMOs, which stands for physically in, mentally out, referring to those in the JWs and similar groups who desire to exit their sect, but are just too afraid of the consequences. So for anyone who doesn't know, how would you describe the Jehovah's Witnesses and what exactly differentiates them from other Christian groups?
Right. So Jehovah's Witnesses believe that they have the one true religion. They don't believe in the Trinity. They believe that Jehovah is God, Jesus is the Son, and that Jesus is going to wipe out all human governments and restore the earth to a paradise. And you'll be able to see your dead loved ones again. Like there's going to be a resurrection, that kind of thing. That's kind of it in a nutshell. Yeah. But for anyone who grew up in the organization, they know that the organization has some really toxic elements. The culture of the organization is incredibly toxic. So, I mean, basically, Jehovah's Witnesses believe they're right and everyone else is wrong. All other religions are false. If you don't convert to being a Jehovah's Witness, you're going to die at Armageddon. It's an incredibly misogynistic organization. Women are not allowed to hold positions of leadership. They are oftentimes encouraged or not encouraged, told to stay in abusive relationships. There's a lot of enabling of domestic abuse that goes on behind closed doors. And Jehovah's Witnesses also have an internal court system or an internal judicial system where if you break any one of their many rules, you're punished either publicly or privately. So privately, you get a little slap on the wrist, but publicly you're disfellowshipped, you're kicked out and shunned. It's been my life experience that women disproportionately compared to men are targeted for this public humiliation. Like for instance, a man and a woman can be guilty of the same spiritual crime or whatever, or break the same rule, and he'll get a little slap on the wrist in private, but she'll be publicly humiliated. She'll be kicked out and shunned, through disfellowshipping. So stuff like that. And, you can't express yourself. Personal expression and free speech is almost a punishable offense, depending on what you say. You can't question the leadership. So it's just a really oppressive system. So, they'll draw you in with images of paradise and nice concepts, but they won't fill you in that first sort of sales pitch of the more toxic elements of the organization.
Okay, let's go back to the very beginning of your experience growing up JW. So what was it like being a JW kid?
So yeah, I was born and raised as one of Jehovah's Witnesses. My parents weren't super strict compared to some other witness parents. They were a little bit more balanced, and I have some good childhood memories. But growing up as a Jehovah's Witness kid, I mean, I'm just calling a spade a spade. It's a weird life. It's a weird, stressful, boring life for a kid. You can't go to your friend's house at school because they don't serve Jehovah. And, your classmates think you're weird. And, you have this bizarre schedule where you go to meetings. You know, they don't call it church, they call it going to meetings. So I remember my childhood was, I had public school all day. And then, you know, I come home, have a ton of homework, and then I have to prepare for meetings. We have to study our magazines and do Bible study, and then go to the meeting 3 times a week from 7:30 to 9:45 at night. And sometimes I didn't get home till 10.
It's like homework on top of homework.
Yeah, exactly. So, and then I had Saturday morning service where I go, you know, you go in the ministry and you knock on doors and, you know, talk to people, you know, in the ministry. And then you have Sunday morning meeting again. So I just remember, like, my entire childhood was passed. And I know I'm not the only one. This is not only unique to me, just kind of giving you a little perspective of what it's like to be a Jehovah's Witness kid. Your entire childhood is passed through this very hateful, intolerant rhetoric that you're learning at the Kingdom Hall. So, like, you're good and special. You're manipulated from a young age to think that you're very good and special because you serve Jehovah, and everybody else on the outside, your classmates and like your little friends at school, everybody else is dangerous and is going to die. And I know for me personally that ideology really messed with my head when I was growing up. And when I talk about my upbringing, you know, or my childhood, you know, I had some good memories. And when I've mentioned this to some people in the past, they say, you know, your parents sound great. Mine were horrible. You know, they beat me and screamed at me, or, you know, I was abused, or I had a really strict childhood. You know, we only did watchtower stuff. We didn't do anything fun. At least you got to do fun stuff. And I hear that, and I have boundless compassion for anybody who went through that, who was either abused as a child or, you know, had even just a really strict upbringing with nothing fun to do. But, you know, I've said this before, and I'll say it again. My parents gave me all the tools to succeed in life and then punished me for using them. So they taught me to be a strong, independent woman. They taught me to be a critical thinker, to be non-judgmental, get an education, you know, expand my horizons and travel. But yet they want me to stay in this very limiting, narcissistic, toxic, misogynistic organization. So it just doesn't add up. And, you know, when I stopped pledging allegiance to Watchtower, their, you know, love and support evaporated overnight. So it depends on how you look at it. And I don't expect everyone to care or sympathize with my backstory. That just happens to be my reality of what I grew up with. You know, so it's kind of like I was raised with 2 value systems where it's like, go be the best you can be, but yet stay within the confines or the borders of this very narrow-minded organization. So that for me personally was very confusing. It's like minus Watchtower. If you took the organization out of the picture, I had pretty good parents. You know, it's like no thanks to Watchtower, no thanks to the organization.
It's interesting you should say critical thinking, because do they mean within the confines of the readings in the meetings?
Yeah, exactly. The two don't go together. So, you know, I was taught to expand my horizons, go to college. College was a big no-no among the witnesses. You know, that's Satan's, you know, world. You're not supposed to get involved with that. Why would you get an education when, you know, the end of the world's coming and there's going to be paradise and that kind of thing? So, you know, so yeah, taught me to be a critical thinker and read different resources, but ultimately always put the organization first. And that's like, but those two don't go together. You can't reconcile the two, because if one contradicts the other, how do you answer for that? And ultimately it was like, okay, I can't align myself, you know, that's another part of the story, but, you know, just, I can't align myself with this organization after what I've learned.
So what caused you to leave the witnesses, and how did you go about it? I
was just miserable as a witness. A lot of the values of the organization just didn't align with mine, as I would discover, you know, as I got older and understood what it was all really about. You know, it was an ideology that was imposed on me from birth, you know, and it caused tremendous emotional and psychological pain and anxiety. I mean, I have just, you know, like chemical and genetic predisposition to that anyways, but it exacerbated it. Let me just put it that way. But the problem is, I thought it was the truth, as they say they have the truth. That's what I was conditioned to believe. And I was terrified more than anything, I was terrified of being shunned by my parents if I ever left. So I didn't know what I was going to do. All I knew was that my intuition was saying something was off, like something felt wrong in my gut. And I knew I needed to distance myself from the organization. And I did. And so what happened was, for about 6 months, I was what you would call inactive. So I wasn't going to meetings. I wasn't preaching or going knocking on doors. And my husband, who was also a witness, he also was waking up, as they say, to the truth about the truth. And he was starting to do research. And we were comparing notes, and we came across something called the Australian Royal Commission. Some viewers or listeners might be familiar with this, but for those who don't know, what happened with the Australian Royal Commission was 1,006 cases. They found 1,006 cases of child sexual abuse that happened in Jehovah's Witness congregations in Australia that were never reported to law enforcement. And that was just the tip of the iceberg. It turns out that the organization has a chronic, systemic child sexual abuse problem that they have been covering up for decades at their headquarters in New York. They have a secret database, and there's been several investigations worldwide that have been launched to investigate their mishandling of child sexual abuse. So that there were multiple things that were compounded, things that didn't add up from, what I was taught, growing up as a Jehovah's Witness. Multiple things didn't add up. There were cracks in the dam, as I say, but that was really the thing that sent me over the edge, that really solidified my concerns or suspicions that something was wrong with the organization. And this is significant, not only because it's horrific, but I just thought the hypocrisy of the organization was astounding, because when I was growing up, they railed against the Catholic Church for covering up child sexual abuse in the Catholic Church. And then yet you have the nerve, the organization has the nerve to prop themselves up as this clean, holy organization. They claim to be God's one true organization on earth, and yet they can't even protect the most vulnerable among them. They're guilty of the exact same thing. So that just blew my mind. There were already multiple nails in the coffin, but that was like the final nail in the coffin that led me to my husband and I officially disassociated or revoked our membership. I just couldn't align myself with the organization. That was really the thing that sent me over the edge of why I left, finally.
Well, a lot of my guests find that those months and even years after leaving a coercive group can be especially difficult, but also enlightening. So what was it like for you after leaving the group?
Well, the first thing was just immediate relief, and it was surreal. It was like I was so happy, but I was waiting for the other shoe to drop. And I knew that shoe was going to be made of lead. In other words, I knew my parents and my family were going to have to shun me for leaving. But that was kind of like the immediate reaction or feelings that I had. But honestly, if I'm being 100% honest, I never really believed it. Like, I was conditioned to believe it was the truth because my parents were devout. And, that's what I was surrounded. That was the environment I was surrounded in my whole life. But honestly, it felt like a Lord of the Rings novel. It was just it was like this prophecy connects to this prophecy. And if you go back 30 years and divide it by 16 or whatever, like, it was just the theology or the beliefs and the doctrines were just, it didn't add up to me. I never really believed in it. So I personally had no problem getting rid of all of it. I know that some people who leave, they worry about Armageddon or dying, oh my God, are the witnesses right? Was I wrong to leave? And they have, they struggle with that a little bit. I didn't. So I was okay after I left in that sense. And also what really helped me was I found, and this is actually also before I officially left, I found the BITE model developed by Stephen Hassan, cult expert. He wrote Combating Cult Mind Control. And the BITE model stands for behavioral, information, thought, and emotion control. And there's bullet points in each quadrant. And when I was reading these bullet points, it's like basically if your group, the group that you're a part of, whether it's religious, political, self-help group, or whatever it is, if they're hitting these bullet points, it's probably a cult. And the witnesses hit almost every single bullet point except for maybe 1 or 2 points. So that's further solidified, like, okay, this is not the truth. I have nothing to be afraid of. This is the same song and dance. They just happen to, their policies and doctrines look a little different than another group, but this is what cults do. So the BITE model really helped me. It was like, okay, I'm gonna be okay. So there was that part of it. And then also when I left, I found the XJW community on YouTube, and I was just so inspired by this community. They were using their voices and they were being brave and standing up against these abuses, the abusive policies of Watchtower, and speaking their truth. And I just wanted to contribute however I could. And the issue that was closest to my heart was the shunning policy. So I created Stop the Shunning in the fall of 2018. And it was amazing. I got to hear so many people's stories, meet, incredible people. And I created it as a space for people to heal, to share their stories. And also a key point of why I created it was for the public, so that, this isn't just a harmless, quirky, marginal religious group that stands at a cart, with literature, or comes and knocks on your door on a Saturday morning. They're not harmless. They have extremely harmful policies that are destroying people's lives and hurting people. And, I wanted the public to see this isn't what they're not going to tell you about in a Bible study or in that first sales pitch when they try to recruit you or start a study with you. This legacy of intergenerational trauma from their shunning policy. Like, people are killing themselves because they're shunned. They have trauma and panic attacks, and it's craziness. So I wanted the public to be able to go onto YouTube and be like, oh, so this is what they don't talk about on jw.org, or, in the jw.org newsroom, spin room, these real raw stories from people who are suffering, who haven't spoken to their parents in 30 years, so that kind of thing. So I just, that's basically the first few years of my exit was trying to in some way contribute to that community and help people in whatever way that I could.
Okay, let's get into the meaning behind PIMO, physically in, mentally out. You've worked with a lot of people who can describe themselves in this way, and your books also deal with this. Bethany, you've spoken about the group's shunning policy. Now, this is a practice used by many cults, but how specifically do Jehovah's Witnesses go about it?
Yeah, so there are two kinds of people in the organization. There are the people that got baptized and people who never got baptized. If you never got baptized, you can technically do whatever you want. And, you can leave and you won't be shunned by your family. They might give you a little crap for it because you're not living a righteous lifestyle. They might want you to be a witness, but they can't technically shun you in most cases. But if you got baptized, doesn't matter if you got baptized at 8, 9, 10 years old. I got baptized at 15. I know a lot of my peers got baptized as teenagers. It doesn't matter. If you leave, you are going to be shunned. And I'm not talking about navigating awkward conversations with your family at Thanksgiving or awkward family reunions. I'm not talking about that. For all intents and purposes, you are disowned. And you have to understand, for most people who got baptized, they were kids. Like I mentioned, kids and teenagers, they're not developmentally capable of processing what they are committing themselves to. They're manipulated from a young age into this lifelong commitment. Watchtower exploits these young people, and then they're held to that contract for the rest of their life. So it's completely unreasonable. There's never a good reason for you to leave the organization. And, this whole shunning policy, Watchtower is messing with people on a very primitive level. Like when you start screwing with people's sense of security and telling them they can't speak to their families, like I mentioned before, this is an understatement. It creates so many problems. I mean, people are struggling with anxiety, depression, panic attacks, this deep-seated trauma, and many people, I will say this from the rooftops, they are killing themselves. And that's, the part that they're not going to talk about in their Bible studies are these is the shunning policy and the effect it has on these people. And of course, Watchtower will twist it around. I talk about this in my book. Watchtower will twist this in very classic narcissistic fashion. We'll turn it around on you to make it look like you're the aggressor. You left. You're the one who's shunning us. You cut us out. And I tell readers in my PIMO book, call it out. When your family says you're cutting us out, not the other way around, call it out. And I say this for two reasons, because I'll have people say, Bethany, your family, or, just speaking in general, your family is so closely identify with it. They are Watchtower. You can't separate, because I'll say, you didn't cut your family out of your life. You cut the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society out of your life. And they'll say, but they so closely identify with it. You can't really peel the two apart. And I understand that. I know that there's a lot of cult indoctrination and cult mind control going on. But I tell readers in the PIMO book, if their family says this to them, that you're shunning us, call it out, because A, it will create a little cognitive dissonance. They might not reverse their decision. They might still shun you, but make their brains hurt a little bit. Create that cognitive dissonance that you're not rejecting your family, you're rejecting Watchtower. And also, most importantly, it'll reinforce in your mind the facts for your own peace of mind. No, don't take this upon you. Don't let this weigh on you. You didn't give up your family. You're not shunning your family. Keep the facts straight in your own head. Reinforce it. So yeah, it's just, just to kind of tying back around, the shunning policy is just a very evil and inhumane policy, the way the Jehovah's Witnesses enforce it and ruin families, basically.
Welcome back to Burning Down the House. In today's video, we're going to talk about the 10 signs your parent is a narcissist. This is part of a 10 sign series I've created for easy reference. You can find it in the 10 sign series playlist on this channel, along with other videos related to narcissism, toxic relationships, setting boundaries, and practicing self-care.
Okay, tell us a bit more about your new YouTube channel. You began with Stop the Shunning, but this has now evolved into Burning Down the House. Bethany, what is meant by burning down the house, and what are the aims of this new channel?
So burning down the house is destroying the framework that has boxed you in. It's the beliefs and expectations that your family has imposed on you that are holding you back. Basically, you have to destroy the person that your family wants you, expects you, and needs you to be, because that person isn't really you. It's a version of you that's making others comfortable. And, just as an example of my process of burning down the house, I couldn't just fade from the Jehovah's Witnesses, meaning a lot of people fade from the organization. They slowly stop participating in congregation activities instead of formally revoking their membership and disassociating. Personally, and, to each their own, everybody has to do what's best for them in their circumstances. Because I don't have to live with the results. But personally for me, I didn't like the idea of fading. I briefly did it, but it felt like I was doing patchwork on a house that I didn't want to live in. It was like papering over the cracks. It felt like I didn't want to walk on eggshells and tiptoe around my parents and my family and, be hyper vigilant and worry, is an elder going to come to my house and see a Christmas tree through my window? Stuff like that. So I was done. And disassociating for me was a symbolic part of my burning down the house process. Like, I am done. I'm not this person. I can't do this anymore. And I don't want to give anyone any false hope that this Jehovah's Witness girl still exists. And this the symbolism or the metaphor is going to be different for everyone. Everybody has the thing that's holding them back, or that last layer that they have to shed. So it'll be different for every person. But that's what it was for me, just to kind of give you like a practical example to illustrate what burning down the house actually means. So tying back around to this new channel, the purpose of the channel Burning Down the House is to help viewers identify toxic behavior in the family, understand the role they're playing in their family and how it's affecting them, and learn how to set boundaries and reclaim their life. And the reason that I think this is so pertinent or so important is that as a certified life coach, I feel like life coaching gets this reputation for using kind of vague, flowery language, like live your dreams, live your best life. And that's true, we want that. But before you get to that point, you have to do some pretty hard, painful work. So, what's the problem? How are you possibly contributing to it? What's holding you back? What's not working for you anymore? And how do you make your choices explicit moving forward? Because life can't just be one big passive experience where life happens to you and you're always a victim. You have to take proactive, mindful steps towards your goals. So, when I talk about toxic family and with this new channel, to be clear, I'm not saying that your family has to agree with or embrace all of your life choices and opinions. And I'm not saying that they're bad people or that you should nitpick and look for bad things or that they don't have the right to their own beliefs. The purpose of the channel is mutual respect and compromise. That's the goal. And when that's not possible in your family to reach mutual respect and compromise, what do? Do you suppress yourself, suppress who you truly are for the rest of your life just to please your parents? Or do you eventually stand up for yourself despite the consequences? So empowerment, personal empowerment, standing up for yourself, protecting yourself is the primary goal of the channel, kind of like practical tips and guidelines to reach that point, getting through that difficult work first.
And just to clarify, Bethany, for anyone who doesn't understand the Christmas tree reference, Christmas is not allowed, is it? Or birthdays.
Yeah, Jehovah's Witnesses don't celebrate Christmas. So yeah, if I were to have a Christmas tree in my house in private, privately celebrating, choosing what I want to do, and I want to celebrate this holiday, I can't. I would get in trouble, even though it's in the privacy of my own home. Sorry, I guess I didn't clarify that earlier, but yeah, Jehovah's Witnesses don't celebrate Christmas. So if somebody came around and saw that tree in my house or through my window, I would be called into one of those judicial meetings and punished for apostasy, for breaking the rules. That's not Christian. They don't believe that it's a Christian holiday. So.
You are an author of the book Physically In, Mentally Out, Navigating Your Exit from Watchtower, available on Amazon, and are currently working on your next book, Burning Down the House, How to Overcome Family Expectations and Build a New Life. So what will the new book be focusing on, and who is it for? So
basically talking about, the themes that we had just talked about, identifying these toxic behaviors, understanding your family dynamics, that kind of thing. It'll be elaborating on all those themes that the channel covers, but the key purpose or mission of the book is focusing on this concept of radical acceptance, meaning your family is not going to change. They're never going to accept you for who you are. So how do you begin this painful process of letting go of the hope that they're going to one day see you and embrace you and love you for who you are? So it's about making that painful transition, burning down the house, getting rid of all those expectations that your family has imposed on you, and rebuilding your life on your own terms. And obviously it's based on my experience, or inspired by my experience of having left the Jehovah's Witnesses, having left the organization. And I know that current and former Jehovah's Witnesses will be able to relate to it in that way, but it's going to include other stories of people who were rejected by their families for their sexual orientation, their difference in religious beliefs or lack of, belief, whether they're atheist or agnostic or however they identify themselves, and, their choice of career or spouse or political affiliation. So that kind of thing, how what their stories were and how they overcame those challenges. And basically that is the theme, the common theme that's running through my work is, challenging this notion of, of the sanctity of family, that family is this sacred institution that we should never question. Blood is thicker than water, father knows best or whatever. Never rock the boat, always keep the peace. My whole thing is, if that's the case, then it's all an illusion. If you have to constantly suppress who you are, if you have to constantly suppress your true self to gain your family's love and approval, then your house is built on a fault line and it needs to burn. So that's basically the gist of Burning Down the House, the book that I'm currently working on.
Well, it's been great getting an insight into your work, and hopefully anyone out there watching will be able to read your books and watch your videos and find a way to feel good about themselves again. I will leave links to your books and YouTube channel in the description below. And all that's left to say is thank you very much indeed, Bethany, for coming on to Talk Beliefs.
Thank you so much, Mark. I really admire the work you're doing. Thanks for having me on.